I found the cabin on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, tucked so deep into the pine forests of northern Maine that my GPS had stopped working 3 miles back. What made me stop was not the cabin itself, but the fresh tire tracks in the mud leading up to it. Deep, recent tracks that glistened with water from the morning rain. But when I looked at the cabin, truly looked at it, I saw boards hanging loose from the windows, a roof sagging under years of neglect, and a door that hung at an angle like a broken jaw. The tracks led right up to that door, but there was no vehicle anywhere. No car, no truck, nothing. Just those tracks, ending at a cabin that looked like it had not seen a living soul in decades. My name is Derek, and I am 27 years old. I had been driving through Maine for 2 days, trying to clear my head after losing my job in Boston. My girlfriend had left me 3 months prior, my apartment lease was ending, and I had nothing tying me down anymore. So I packed my old Subaru and decided to drive north with no particular destination in mind. Just away. Away from the city, away from the memories, away from the person I had become. Before I continue, I want you to know that what I am about to tell you is true, every word of it. And if you have ever felt that pull towards something you know you should avoid, if you have ever ignored that voice in your head telling you to turn back, then maybe you will understand why I did what I did. If you are enjoying this story so far, drop a comment below telling me about a time you ignored your instincts. I read every single one. The tire tracks bothered me more than they should have. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, engine running, heater blasting against the October chill, just staring at those tracks. They were fresh. Maybe an hour old, maybe less. The tread pattern was clear and deep, suggesting a heavy vehicle, probably a truck. But where had it gone? I am not usually the type to investigate mysteries. I am the type who minds his own business, who walks past strange noises in the night, who crosses the street to avoid confrontation. But something about this felt wrong in a way that demanded attention. What if someone was hurt? What if they needed help? I turned off my engine and stepped out into the cold. The forest was absolutely silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. Just the sound of my boots crunching on the wet gravel and pine needles. The smell of decay hung in the air, that sweet rot scent of fallen leaves and dying things that always comes with autumn. As I approached the cabin, I noticed other details that did not make sense. The porch steps were old and weathered, but the third step had a fresh boot print on it. Just one. A large print, maybe size 12 or 13, pressed into a thin layer of mud that had somehow accumulated on the wood. But the other steps were clean. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded small and absorbed by the trees around me. "Is anyone here? Do you need help?" No response. The front door was ajar, hanging crooked on rusted hinges. Through the gap, I could see darkness and what looked like an old wooden floor covered in leaves and debris. I pushed the door open slowly. It creaked like something out of a horror movie, a long, drawn-out groan that made my teeth clench. The interior of the cabin was exactly what you would expect from an abandoned building. Dust covered everything in a thick gray blanket. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling corners like tattered curtains. An old couch sat against one wall, its fabric torn and spilling yellow foam. A stone fireplace dominated the far wall, its mouth black and cold. But there were fresh disturbances in the dust on the floor. Footprints. Lots of them. They crossed and recrossed the room, packing patterns that suggested someone had been walking back and forth, for hours. The prints were the same size as the one on the porch step. They led to every corner of the cabin, to the windows, to the fireplace, to a closed door on the right side of the room. "Hello," I called again, louder this time. "I saw the tire tracks. I just want to make sure everyone is okay." Still nothing. I should have left then. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get back in my car and drive away. But I have always had a problem with curiosity, with needing to know, needing to understand. And those footprints led to that closed door with such purpose that I could not ignore them. I crossed the room, my own footsteps adding to the confusion of prints in the dust. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and somewhere in the walls I heard a skittering sound. Mice, probably, or rats. The door had no handle, just a hole where one used to be. I pushed it open with my fingertips. It swung inward to reveal a small bedroom. A metal bed frame sat against the far wall, its mattress long since rotted away. A dresser with all its drawers pulled out and empty. A window so dirty that barely any light came through. And in the center of the room, drawn in the dust on the floor, was a perfect circle about 6 feet in diameter. Inside the circle were symbols I did not recognize. Strange, angular marks that looked almost like letters but from no alphabet I had ever seen. In the very center of the circle sat a single object, a photograph. I stepped closer, careful not to disturb the circle. The photograph was old, maybe from the 1970s based on the color and style. It showed a family standing in front of this very cabin. A mother, a father, 2 children. They were all smiling, but something about their smiles seemed wrong. Too wide, too fixed, like they were forcing themselves to look happy. That is when I heard the breathing. It came from behind me, from the main room. Slow, deliberate breaths, in and out, in and out. The rhythm was wrong somehow, too measured, like someone was manually controlling each inhale and exhale. I spun around. The main room was empty. At least I thought it was empty. But the dust on the floor, which had been disturbed only by footprints moments before, now showed a new pattern. Handprints. Dozens of handprints pressed into the dust, as if someone had been crawling across the floor on their hands and knees. And they were fresh. I could see the edges of the prints still settling, little clouds of dust still floating in the air. "Who is there?" My voice cracked. I backed up until I hit the windowsill in the bedroom. The breathing continued. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then I realized it was coming from above me, from the ceiling. I looked up slowly, terrified of what I might see. The ceiling was covered in water stains and peeling paint, but nothing else. No one clinging to the rafters, no face staring down at me, just old wood and decay. But the breathing was definitely coming from up there. And as I stared, I saw one of the water stains begin to move. It spread outward like something liquid was being poured from above, seeping through the wood. The stain formed a shape, a human shape, arms, legs, a head. Then it began to drip. Thick, dark drops fell from the ceiling, landing on the floor with wet splashes. The drops were not water. They were too viscous, too dark. They fell in the space between the bedroom and the main room, forming a small puddle that grew with each drop. I wanted to run. Every fiber of my being was telling me to bolt for the front door and never look back. But I was frozen, transfixed by the horror of what I was seeing. The puddle began to move on its own, flowing across the floor in defiance of gravity, moving toward the circle drawn in the dust. When the dark liquid reached the circle's edge, it stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols inside the circle began to glow with a faint blue light. The photograph in the center lifted into the air, hovering a few inches above the floor. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the breathing had been. It was a complete absence of sound, as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire world. I could not even hear my own heartbeat, though I could feel it hammering in my chest. Then a voice spoke. It was not loud, but it filled the entire space, resonating in my bones. "You should not have come here, Derek." It knew my name. How did it know my name? I had not introduced myself. I had not carried anything with my name on it into the cabin, but somehow it knew. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. My voice sounded distant, muffled, like I was hearing it through water. "I am what remains," the voice said. "I am what was left behind when they departed. I am the echo in the empty room, the shadow on the wall after the lamp is extinguished. I am still inside, Derek. I have always been inside." The puddle of dark liquid began to rise, forming a shape. It was vaguely human but wrong in proportions. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent at angles that should not be possible. As it took form, I could see through it, see the wall beyond, but its presence was undeniable. "The family in the photograph," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to understand. "What happened to them?" The shape turned toward me. Where its face should have been, there was nothing but a smooth, featureless surface. But I could feel it looking at me, studying me. "They made a bargain," it said. "A desperate bargain born of desperate times. The father was dying, you see. Cancer eating through his lungs, stealing his breath bit by bit. The mother found the old books, the ones hidden in the walls of this place. She learned the words, drew the symbols, made the offering." "What offering?" I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. "Themselves," the shape said. "They offered themselves in exchange for his life. But bargains with the old things, with the things that exist in the spaces between, they never work the way you think they will. The father lived, oh yes. He lived for 30 more years, but he lived alone because his family was gone, taken, consumed. And when he finally died, I remained. I always remain." I glanced at the circle on the floor. The symbols were glowing brighter now, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Why are you still here? Why have you not left?" "Because I am bound," the shape said. There was something like sadness in its voice, though it could have been mockery. I could not tell. "The circle binds me. The symbols hold me. As long as they remain intact, I remain. Trapped in this place, in this moment, forever and always." I looked at the circle more carefully. The symbols were drawn in what looked like ash or charcoal, delicate and easily disturbed. It would take almost nothing to break the circle, to smudge one of the symbols and free whatever this thing was. "You want me to break the circle?" I said. It was not a question. "I want many things, Derek," the shape replied. "I want to feel the sun on skin I no longer have. I want to taste food, to drink water, to sleep and dream. I want to leave this prison of wood and stone, but what I want does not matter. What matters is what you will do." "Why would I free you?" I asked. "You took a family, you consumed them. Why would I release something like you into the world?" The shape moved closer. Even though it was not solid, even though I could see through it, I felt its proximity like a cold pressure against my skin. "Because I can give you what you seek," it said. "You came to these woods to escape, to run from your pain. But pain follows, Derek, it always follows. I can take that pain away. I can make you forget the girlfriend who left, the job you lost, the emptiness that has been eating at you for months. I can give you peace." It was tempting. I would be lying if I said it was not tempting. The idea of just forgetting, of having all that weight lifted from my shoulders, was almost irresistible. But something about the offer felt wrong. Not just morally wrong, but fundamentally wrong, like it violated some basic rule of existence. If you are watching this and you have made it this far, I want you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. What happens next is going to get intense, and you are going to want to see where this goes. Plus, it helps me keep making content like this. Now, back to that cabin. "What is the catch?" I asked. "There is always a catch with things like you." The shape made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Smart boy," it said. "The catch is simple. To take away your pain, I must take away your memories of joy as well. Pain and joy, they are intertwined, you see. You cannot have one without the other. If I remove your suffering, I remove your capacity for happiness. You will exist, but you will not live. You will be empty, just like this cabin, just like me." "No," I said. The word came out firmer than I expected. "No, I will not do that." "Then leave," the shape said. "Walk away, get in your car and drive. Forget you ever saw this place. But know that I will remain here waiting. And someday someone else will come, someone more desperate, more willing, and I will make them the same offer. Eventually, someone will say yes." I thought about that. I thought about some future person, maybe someone even more broken than I was, stumbling upon this cabin and being offered the same devil's bargain. Could I walk away knowing that? Could I leave this thing here to prey on the desperate and the lost? "There has to be another way," I said. "A way to end this without freeing you." "There is," the shape admitted, "but you will not like it." "Tell me." The shape drifted back toward the circle. "The bargain that bound me was made with blood and breath. To break it permanently, to truly end my existence, someone must enter the circle willingly and give the same offering. Blood and breath, life for life. You would have to die here, Derek, in this circle, to unmake what was made." "That is not happening," I said immediately. "I told you that you would not like it," the shape replied. "Those are your options. Free me, leave me, or destroy me at the cost of your own life. Choose." I stared at the circle, at the pulsing symbols, at the photograph still hovering in the center. The family smiled their two wide smiles, frozen in that moment of false happiness. What had they been thinking when they made their bargain? Had they known what it would cost? Had the mother understood that she was sacrificing herself and her children for a few more years of her husband's life? And the father, living on alone for 3 decades, knowing what he had cost them. That must have been its own kind of hell. "How do I know you are telling the truth?" I asked. "How do I know that breaking the circle would not just free you anyway? How do I know that sacrificing myself would actually end you?" "You do not," the shape said simply. "You have only my word, and the word of something like me is worth nothing. But consider this, Derek. I have been trapped here for decades, alone, aware, unable to move beyond this cabin, unable to exist in any meaningful way. Do you think I would endure this if there were any other option? Do you think I would not have found a way to escape by now if one existed?" There was a logic to that, a terrible logic, but I still did not trust it. How could I? This thing had admitted to consuming a family, to being something from the spaces between, whatever that meant. Its very existence defied natural law. I needed time to think. I needed to get out of this cabin and clear my head. "I am leaving," I said. "I am not making any decisions right now. I need to think." "You cannot think your way out of this, Derek," the shape said. "There is no clever solution, no loophole, no trick. There are only the 3 choices I gave you, but go if you must. Think. The circle will hold me a while longer. I have nowhere to go." I backed toward the door, keeping my eyes on the shape. It did not follow, just watched me with its featureless face. When I reached the main room, I turned and hurried toward the front door. The handprints in the dust were gone, I noticed. The floor looked exactly as it had when I first entered, just my footprints and the packing pattern. I burst out onto the porch and gulped in the fresh air. The forest was no longer silent. Birds were singing, and a breeze rustled through the pine trees. It was like stepping from one world into another. The normalcy of it was almost painful after the wrongness inside the cabin. My car sat where I had left it, unchanged and normal. I walked to it on shaking legs and got inside, locking the doors immediately. For a long moment I just sat there, trying to process what had just happened. Had it been real? Had I really just talked to some kind of supernatural entity? Or had I experienced some kind of mental breakdown? I looked at the cabin. From the outside, it looked exactly as it had before. Old, abandoned, falling apart. There was no hint of the horror inside, no indication that anything unnatural waited within those walls. But I knew it was real. I could still feel the cold pressure of that thing's presence, could still hear its voice resonating in my bones. I pulled out my phone, no signal of course. I was still too deep in the woods, but I opened my notes app and started typing everything that had happened, every detail I could remember. If nothing else, I needed to document this. I needed proof, even if only for myself, that I had not imagined it. When I finished typing, I sat back and read through what I had written. It sounded insane, absolutely insane, but it was true, all of it. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I could drive away, just as the shape had suggested. I could leave this place behind and never think about it again. Or at least, I could try not to think about it. But would I be able to live with myself, knowing that thing was still in there, waiting for the next desperate soul to wander by? I could call the police, but what would I tell them? that there was a supernatural entity trapped in an abandoned cabin. They would laugh at me, or worse, they would think I was dangerous and have me committed. I could try to research the cabin, find out who the family had been, see if there were any records of what happened here. But what good would that do? The shape had already told me the story. Knowing the details would not change the situation. That left only one real option, and it was the one I had been trying to avoid thinking about. I could go back in there. I could try to end this, one way or another. But how? The shape had given me 3 choices, and none of them were good. I was not going to free it, that was certain. I was not going to unleash something like that on the world. And I was not ready to die, to sacrifice myself to end it. That left doing nothing, which was really just another form of leaving. Unless there was a 4th option, something the shape had not told me about, something I could find on my own. I started the car and pulled out my road map. The nearest town was about 15 miles south, a small place called Millbrook. If there were any records about this cabin, about the family that had lived here, that is where they would be. Maybe I could find something, some piece of information that would give me another option. It took me almost an hour to drive to Millbrook. The roads were narrow and winding, and I had to backtrack twice when I took wrong turns. But eventually, I found myself on a small main street lined with old brick buildings. A general store, a diner, a post office, and a small library. I parked in front of the library and went inside. The interior was small but well maintained, with rows of bookshelves and a few tables scattered around. An elderly woman sat behind the circulation desk, reading a paperback novel. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the desk. "I am doing some research on properties in the area. Is there a local history section?" The woman looked up and smiled. "Of course, dear. Back corner, left side. We have quite a bit on Millbrook and the surrounding areas. Are you looking for anything in particular?" "Information on an old cabin about 15 miles north of here," I said. "It is abandoned now, but I think a family lived there back in the 70s or 80s. Her smile faded slightly. "North of here, you said, deep in the woods?" "Yes," I replied. "Do you know the place?" She set down her book and removed her reading glasses. "I know of it," she said carefully. "That was the Holloway place. Tragic story, that one." "Holloway," I repeated, committing the name to memory. "What happened to them?" The woman glanced around the library, even though we were the only 2 people there. "The father, James Holloway, he got sick back in 1973. Lung cancer, bad case. Everyone thought he was going to die, but then suddenly he got better, just like that. The cancer was gone, doctors could not explain it." "And his family?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Gone," the woman said. "His wife Patricia and their 2 children, Emma and Thomas, they disappeared one night. No trace of them, no signs of foul play. Police searched for months but never found anything. James claimed they had just left him, run off in the middle of the night. But no one believed that. Patricia was devoted to those children, and they were a happy family by all accounts." "What did James say happened?" I pressed. The woman shook her head. "He would not talk about it, became a recluse, barely came to town. When he did, he looked haunted, like he was carrying some terrible guilt. He lived in that cabin alone for 30 more years before he finally died. Heart attack, I think, or maybe he just gave up." "Did anyone ever investigate the cabin after he died?" I asked. "The county sent someone to clear out his belongings, but they did not find much. Just old furniture and trash. No answers about what happened to his family." She leaned forward. "Why are you asking about this, if you do not mind me asking?" I hesitated. I was driving through and saw the place, got curious about its history. She studied me for a moment, and I got the feeling she knew I was not telling her everything. "You seem like a smart young man," she said. "So let me give you some advice. Stay away from that cabin. Whatever happened there, it is not the kind of thing you want to dig into. Some places are better left alone." "Why do you say that?" I asked. Because you are not the first person to come asking about it, she said. Over the years, maybe 4 or 5 others have shown up, asking the same questions. Young people, usually, curious types. And do you know what they all have in common? What? They all went back to that cabin after I told them the story, and they all came back changed, quieter, scared, like they had seen something they could not unsee. She paused. One of them, a girl about your age, she told me she heard voices in that cabin. Voices offering her things, promising her peace. She was smart enough to run. Are you smart enough, Derek? I froze. How do you know my name? I did not tell you my name. The woman's expression did not change. Did you not? Must have slipped my mind, or maybe you look like a Derek. But I knew I had not told her, just like the shape in the cabin had known my name. What was happening here? Who are you? I asked. I am just an old librarian, she said. Someone who has lived in this town her whole life and seen things that do not make sense. Someone who knows that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. She picked up her book and put her reading glasses back on. The local history section is in the back corner. You will find newspaper clippings about the Holloways there. But I suggest you read them, get in your car, and drive as far from here as you can. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to make of her. Then I nodded and headed toward the back of the library. The local history section was small, just 3 shelves of books and binders. I found one labeled Millbrook Gazette, 1971-980, and pulled it down. Inside were yellowed newspaper clippings, carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. I flipped through until I found articles about the Holloways. The first was from March 1973, with the headline "Local Man Makes Miraculous Recovery." It detailed James Holloway's sudden remission from terminal lung cancer, calling it a medical mystery. There was a photo of him standing outside the cabin with his family. They were all smiling, but just like in the photograph I had seen in the cabin, their smiles looked forced. The next article was from June 1973, "Family Vanishes Without a Trace." It described the disappearance of Patricia, Emma, and Thomas Holloway. James had reported them missing after waking up one morning to find them gone. Police had searched the woods and dragged nearby ponds but found nothing. There were several follow-up articles over the next few months, but none provided any new information. The family had simply vanished. The last article about the Holloways was from 2003, a brief obituary for James. It mentioned that he had died alone and that no services would be held. I closed the binder and sat back. The woman at the desk had been right. The story was tragic, but it did not give me any new information. The shape in the cabin had already told me what happened. The family had been consumed as part of a bargain. But maybe there was something else here, something that could help me. I started pulling down other binders, looking for anything about the cabin itself or the land it sat on. In a binder labeled "Property Records and Local Legends," I found something interesting. It was a handwritten account, dated 1892, from a logger named Samuel Pierce. He wrote about discovering a small cabin deep in the woods and about the strange symbols carved into the trees around it. According to Pierce, the local Native American tribes avoided that area, claiming it was cursed. They said the land was a thin place, where the barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead was weak. Spirits could cross over there, they claimed, and not all spirits were benign. Pierce's account went on to describe how he had entered the cabin and found symbols drawn on the floor in what looked like blood. He had fled immediately and refused to log in that area again. Other loggers who ignored his warnings reported hearing voices and seeing shapes in the darkness. One man disappeared entirely, never to be found. So the cabin was not just the site of the Holloways' tragedy. It was something more, something older, a thin place, a crossing point between worlds. That explained why Patricia Holloway had been able to make her bargain there. She had not created the connection. She had simply used what was already present. And if the land itself was the problem, not just the circle, then breaking the circle might not free the shape. It might just change where it was bound. Or worse, It might allow it to move freely within that thin place, able to reach out further into the surrounding woods. I needed more information. I went back to the front desk, where the woman was still reading her book. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you have any books on local Native American tribes or on local folklore and legends?" She looked up. "Having trouble staying away, are we?" "I just want to understand," I said. She sighed and stood up. "Follow me." She led me to a different section of the library and pulled down 2 books. One was titled The Abenaki People of Northern Maine, and the other was Folklore and Legends of New England. She handed them to me. "The Abenaki lived in this region for thousands of years before Europeans arrived," she said. "They have stories about thin places, about spirits and crossings. Maybe you will find what you are looking for in there." She paused. "Or maybe you will find enough sense to leave this alone." I took the books to one of the tables and started reading. The first book was mostly historical, detailing the Abenaki way of life and their relationship with the land. But there was a chapter on spiritual beliefs that caught my attention. According to Abenaki tradition, the world was divided into multiple layers of reality. The physical world where humans lived was just one layer. Other layers existed above and below, inhabited by spirits and other beings. Most of the time, these layers were separate, but in certain places, under certain conditions, the barriers between them could weaken. These were the thin places. The Abenaki had rituals for dealing with thin places. They would mark them with specific symbols to warn others away and perform ceremonies to strengthen the barriers. But they also acknowledged that some thin places were too powerful to be sealed completely. The best you could do was avoid them. The second book, the Folklore Collection, had a section on guardians and prisoners. It described various New England legends about spirits that were trapped or bound by magic. According to the book, a bound spirit could only be freed in specific ways: by completing the terms of its binding, by destroying the binding entirely, or by replacing it with another binding of equal or greater power. That gave me an idea. What if I could replace the shape with something else? What if I could bind a different spirit to that place, one that was not malevolent? But even as I thought it, I realized how absurd it was. I did not know how to bind spirits. I did not even know if such a thing was possible. Unless I could find the books that Patricia Holloway had used. The shape had said she found old books hidden in the walls of the cabin. If those books were still there, they might contain the rituals she had used. And if I understood the rituals, maybe I could find a way to undo them without sacrificing myself. It was a long shot, but it was better than nothing. I returned the books to the desk and thanked the woman. She watched me leave with a sad expression, like she knew I was making a mistake but could not stop me. The drive back to the cabin felt longer than the drive away. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel and my heart was racing. Part of me wanted to turn around to take the librarian's advice and just leave. But I could not. Not now. Not when I might have a way to end this. When I reached the cabin, the sun was starting to set. Long shadows stretched across the clearing, and the temperature had dropped significantly. I sat in my car for a moment, building up my courage. Then I grabbed a flashlight from my glove compartment and got out. The cabin looked even more ominous in the fading light. The windows were dark holes, and the crooked door seemed to leer at me like a twisted smile. I took a deep breath and went inside. The main room was just as I had left it, footprints in the dust and all. I shone my flashlight around, looking for any sign of hidden compartments or loose boards. If the books were hidden in the walls, they had to be accessible somehow. I started with the fireplace. Old fireplaces often had hiding spots, places where people could stash valuables or contraband. I ran my hands along the stones, pressing and pulling, looking for anything that moved. Nothing. Next, I tried the walls themselves. I knocked on the boards, listening for hollow sounds. Most of them sounded solid, but near the back corner I found a section that sounded different, more resonant. I pushed on it, and a panel shifted slightly. My heart leapt. I wedged my fingers into the gap and pulled. The panel came away with a screech of old nails, revealing a small space behind it. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were 3 leather-bound books. I pulled them out carefully and set them on the floor. The oilcloth had protected them well. The leather was dry but intact. I opened the first one. The pages were handwritten in faded ink, covered in symbols and diagrams. It looked like some kind of grimoire, a book of magic spells and rituals. The language was archaic, difficult to read, but I could make out enough to understand the general purpose. This book was about bindings and summonings, about calling things from other places and trapping them. The second book was similar but focused more on protection spells and wards. How to keep unwanted spirits out, how to strengthen barriers, how to cleanse cursed objects. The third book was different. It was a journal written by multiple people over many years. The earliest entries dated back to the 1800s. I flipped through, reading entries at random. Each one told a story of someone using the cabin for magical purposes. Some sought power, others sought knowledge, still others sought to communicate with the dead. And every single one ended badly. Either the person disappeared, died, or went mad. The last entry in the journal was from Patricia Holloway, dated May 1973. "I have made a terrible mistake," she wrote. "I thought I could save James, thought I could pay the price without understanding what that price truly was. The ritual worked, his cancer is gone, but the entity that answered my call is not what I expected. It does not want payment, it wants companions, it wants us. It is taking us one by one, pulling us into that circle, consuming us. Emma is already gone. Thomas is fatting. I can feel it pulling at me too. If anyone finds this, do not use these books. Do not make bargains with the things that wait in the thin places. The cost is always more than you can bear." The entry ended there. I sat back, feeling sick. Patricia had known what was happening and had been powerless to stop it. She had tried to save her husband and ended up destroying her family. But she had also confirmed something important. The entity consumed them one by one. It took them over time, which meant it had a process, a method. And if it had a method, it might have a weakness. I turned back to the first book, the one about bindings and summonings. I started reading more carefully, looking for anything that might help. There were dozens of rituals, each more complex than the last, but one caught my attention. It was titled "The Reversal of Unwilling Bindings." The ritual was complex, requiring specific materials and precise timing, but the basic principle was simple. If someone had been bound against their will, if they had been consumed by an entity through trickery or force, their essence could be recalled and used to trap that entity in turn. The victim becomes the prison. The consumed become the chains. According to the book, Patricia and her children had not been willing sacrifices. They had been tricked, consumed slowly despite their resistance. That meant their essence was still there, still trapped within the entity. And if I could perform the reversal ritual correctly, I could use them to bind it permanently. Not just to the circle, but to a state of non-existence. A true death, if such a thing could die. But the ritual required something specific. It required a living person to stand in the circle and call to the consumed souls, to give them permission to act, to invite them to take their revenge. That person would serve as a conduit, a bridge between the physical world and whatever realm the entity inhabited. And there was a risk. If the ritual failed, if the consumed souls were too weak or too far gone, the entity would take the person in the circle instead. Another meal, another victim. It was still a gamble, still a risk, but it was better than the 3 options the shape had given me. At least this way, there was a chance of ending this without dying and without unleashing something terrible on the world. I heard a sound behind me, that slow, measured breathing. I spun around to see the shape standing in the doorway of the bedroom, watching me. "You found the books," it said. Its voice was different now. "Angry, clever Derek, too clever for your own good. I found a way to end you. I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. A way to trap you permanently. The shape laughed, a horrible wet sound like drowning. The reversal ritual. Yes, I know of it. Patricia found it too near the end. Do you know what happened when she tried to perform it? I did not answer. She failed, the shape said. Because the ritual requires something she could not provide. It requires the souls to want to return, to want to fight. But I had already consumed them so thoroughly that there was nothing left to want anything. They were part of me. They are part of me. You cannot separate us. You are lying, I said. You are afraid. I am not afraid of you, Derek, it replied. I am trying to save you from yourself. If you attempt that ritual, you will fail. And when you fail, I will take you. I will add you to the collection. Is that what you want? Better than freeing you, I shot back. The shape moved closer. Even though it was not solid, I felt the temperature drop as it approached. You still do not understand what I am, do you? I am not some demon from hell. I am not evil incarnate. I am what remains when life is stolen, when souls are ripped from their bodies before their time. I am grief made manifest. I am the echo of Patricia's desperation, Emma's fear, Thomas's confusion, James's guilt. All of them compressed into this single point of existence. I am them, Derek. I am the family, and I am so tired of being trapped here. I stared at the shape, trying to process what it was saying. If you are them, if you are the family, then help me. Help me perform the ritual. Help me end this. I cannot, the shape said, and for the first time I heard genuine emotion in its voice. Because the parts of me that were them are buried too deep. The entity that answered Patricia's call, it consumed us and then became us. We are mixed together, indistinguishable. If you destroy it, you destroy what remains of them too. Then they are already gone, I said softly. And keeping you here is not honoring them. It is just prolonging their suffering. The shape was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again, quieter now. You may be right, but the ritual will not work the way you think. You will not be binding me. You will be ending all of us. The entity and the family together, complete annihilation. Is that not what you want? I asked. You said you were tired of being trapped. There is a difference between being trapped and not existing at all, the shape replied. But yes, perhaps it is time. Perhaps it has been time for a very long while. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the supernatural cold in the room. Are you saying you will help me? I am saying I will not stop you, the shape said. If you truly want to perform the ritual, if you are willing to risk your life for this, then I will allow it. But understand, Derek, if you fail, I will take you. Not because I want to, but because I will have no choice. The hunger is not something I control. It controls me. I looked down at the book in my hands, at the ritual instructions written in faded ink. The materials required were simple: salt for purification, ash for remembrance, blood for connection. I had all of those things or could get them easily. The timing was specific too. The ritual had to be performed at 3 a.m., the dead hour, when the barrier between worlds was thinnest. I checked my watch. It was 8:47 p.m. I had 6 hours to prepare. I will do it, I said. I will perform the ritual at 3 a.m. The shape nodded slowly. Then I will see you in the circle, Derek, one way or another. It faded away, dissipating like smoke in the wind. I was alone in the cabin again, just me and the books and the circle on the floor. I spent the next few hours preparing. I went out to my car and retrieved my first aid kit, which had antiseptic wipes and a small knife I could use to draw blood. I found salt in an old container in the cabin's kitchen area. For ash, I gathered some from the cold fireplace. As I worked, I memorized the ritual. The words were in Latin or something close to it. I practiced saying them over and over until they flowed naturally. The ritual was not long, maybe 5 minutes from start to finish, but every word had to be perfect. Every gesture had to be precise. By 2 a.m., I was ready. I sat in the main room, waiting, trying not to think about what could go wrong. The cabin was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the loose boards and whistling through gaps in the walls. I thought about my life, about the choices that had led me here. A year ago, I had been happy. I had a good job, a girlfriend I loved, a future I was looking forward to. And then, piece by piece, it all fell apart. The job was downsized away. The girlfriend left for someone more stable, more successful. The future became uncertain, then impossible, then meaningless. And now here I was, in an abandoned cabin in the woods of Maine, preparing to risk my life to end something that most people did not even believe existed. It was absurd. It was insane. But it also felt right. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something that mattered, something that was bigger than my own problems and pain. If I could end this, if I could prevent anyone else from being consumed by this thing, then maybe my life would have meaning after all. Before we continue with what happened at 3 a.m., I want to ask you to do something for me. If this story is resonating with you, if you are invested in what happens next, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves horror stories. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep making content like this. And trust me, you are going to want to see how this ends. At 2:55 a.m., I entered the bedroom. The circle was still there, symbols glowing faintly in the darkness. The photograph of the Holloway family lay in the center, just as I had last seen it. I positioned myself at the edge of the circle, salt in my left hand, ash in my right, the knife tucked into my belt. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy I could not name. My breath came out in visible puffs, even though the night was not that cold. I could feel something watching me, waiting. At exactly 3 a.m. I began. I stepped into the circle. The moment my foot crossed the line, the symbols blazed bright blue, so bright I had to squint. The photograph lifted into the air, spinning slowly, and the shape materialized directly in front of me, closer than it had ever been. "Last chance, Derek," it whispered. "You can still walk away." "No," I said, "I cannot." I poured the salt in a line across the circle, dividing it in half. The shape hissed as the salt touched the floor, recoiling slightly. Then I scattered the ash over the salt, speaking the first words of the ritual. "Anima consumpta, audi me. Souls consumed, hear me. You who were taken unwilling, you who were deceived, I call to you across the divide." The shape screamed. It was not a sound but a feeling, a pressure that tried to force its way into my skull. I staggered but kept speaking. "Patricia Holloway, Emma Holloway, Thomas Holloway, I speak your names, I remember you. I acknowledge your suffering." The photograph began to spin faster. Images flashed across its surface, no longer just the smiling family but other moments. Patricia reading to her children, Emma playing in the woods, Thomas laughing at something his father said. Happy moments, real moments. "You were not sacrifices," I continued, pulling out the knife. "You were victims, and you deserve justice." I drew the blade across my palm. It hurt, sharp and immediate, but I did not stop. I let the blood drip onto the salt and ash mixture, completing the connection. "By my blood I give you permission. By my voice I give you power. Take what was taken from you. Reclaim what was stolen. Bind that which bound you." The shape was convulsing now, its form flickering and changing. I saw faces in its darkness. Patricia's face, twisted in anguish. Emma's face, frozen in terror. Thomas's face, confused and afraid. And behind them all, something else. Something ancient and hungry and completely inhuman. "Separate what was joined," I said, speaking faster now. The words were burning my throat, tasting like copper and ash. "Return what was stolen. End what should never have been." The shape split. I actually saw it happen. It tore itself in two, then in three, then in four. Each piece was distinct, individual. Patricia, Emma, Thomas, and the entity. They stood in the circle with me, all of them visible now, all of them real. Patricia looked at me. Her eyes were hollow, empty, but there was something in them. recognition, gratitude. "Thank you," she mouthed. No sound came out, but I understood. Then the three of them turned toward the entity. It was smaller now without them, weaker. It looked almost pitiful, a shadow of its former self, but it was still dangerous. I could feel the hunger radiating from it, the desperate need to consume, to survive. Patricia reached out and touched it. Where her hand made contact, the entity began to dissolve. Emma and Thomas did the same, each touch erasing a part of it. The entity struggled, trying to pull away, but it had no strength left. The ritual had stripped it of the souls it had been using as armor. The process was not quick. For several minutes, I watched as the family slowly unmade the thing that had consumed them. They showed no mercy, no hesitation. This was their revenge, their justice, and I had given them the means to take it. Finally, the entity was gone, completely and utterly gone. Only the three spirits remained, standing in the circle with me. They looked more solid now, more real. Patricia smiled at me, a genuine smile this time. Then she looked at her children, and they looked back at her with love. They faded away together, not dissolving like the entity, but simply becoming less visible, less present. In moments, they were gone. The circle stopped glowing. The photograph fell to the floor, and I was alone. I collapsed to my knees, exhausted. My hand was still bleeding and my head was pounding, but I was alive, I had survived, and more importantly, I had ended it. The cabin was no longer a thin place. I could feel the difference. The air was lighter, the oppressive energy gone. It was just an old, abandoned building now, nothing more. I wrapped my hand in gauze from the first aid kit and stumbled out of the cabin. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Birds were singing their morning songs. Everything felt new, clean, reborn. I got in my car and drove away from that place. I did not look back. Over the next few days, I made my way back to Boston. I did not have a plan, did not have a job or an apartment waiting for me. But somehow, that did not matter anymore. The weight I had been carrying, the emptiness that had consumed me for months, it was lighter now. Not gone, not completely, but manageable. I had learned something important in that cabin. Pain is not something you can just erase or run away from. It is part of you, woven into the fabric of your life. And trying to get rid of it, trying to make bargains to remove it, only creates more pain. The only way through is through. You have to feel it, acknowledge it, carry it, and keep moving forward anyway. Patricia Holloway had learned that lesson too late. She had tried to cheat death, to bargain her way out of loss, and it cost her everything. But in the end, she had found a kind of redemption. She had protected her children one last time, helping them find peace. And I had been the instrument of that peace. I never went back to that cabin. I looked it up online once and found that it had burned down about a week after I left. The fire department ruled it an accident, probably caused by squatters or lightning. The land was eventually sold to a logging company, and as far as I know, nothing unusual has happened there since. I rebuilt my life slowly. I found a new job, a smaller one with less pay but more meaning. I started seeing a therapist to work through my issues in a healthy way. I even started dating again, though I took it slow. I was not the same person who had driven into those woods months before. I was harder in some ways, more cautious, but I was also more alive, more present. I appreciated things I had taken for granted before. And sometimes, late at night when I cannot sleep, I think about Patricia, Emma, and Thomas. I wonder where they are now, if they found the peace they deserved. I like to think they did. I like to think they are together somewhere, finally free of the thing that had bound them for so long. I never told anyone this story. Not my therapist, not my new girlfriend, not my family. Who would believe it? It sounds like something from a movie, a creepypasta, a tale told around a campfire to scare teenagers. But it was real, every word of it. And that is why I am sharing it with you now. Because there are thin places in this world. Places where the barriers between what is and what should not be grow weak. Places where desperate people make desperate choices. And if you ever find yourself in one of those places, if you ever hear voices offering you peace or power or freedom from pain, remember what I learned. There is no shortcut through suffering. There is no bargain that does not cost more than you can afford to pay. The only way out is through. Feel your pain, carry your grief, and keep moving forward. That is the only magic that really works. That is the only ritual that matters. I am Derek. I am 27 years old, and I found an abandoned cabin where someone was still inside. But I do not think it was the entity that needed to be found. I think it was me. I was the one who was lost, the one who was trapped in my own pain and desperation. And that cabin, as horrible as it was, showed me the way back to myself. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness to what happened in those woods. And if you ever find yourself facing your own thin place, your own moment of desperate choice, I hope you remember this tale. I hope you choose to walk through your pain instead of trying to bargain it away. Because in the end, the only person who can save you is yourself. And that is a truth no entity, no spirit, no force in this world or any other can change. Stay safe out there. And remember, some doors are meant to remain closed. But if you open one anyway, make sure you are strong enough to deal with what is on the other side. This is Derek signing off. And if you enjoyed this story, if it moved you or scared you or made you think, please subscribe to the channel. There are more stories where this came from, more thin places I have encountered, more lessons I have learned the hard way, and I would be honored to share them with you. Until next time, stay curious, stay careful, and stay human.